Most tax pros leave a message.
It's Jane. I'm moving on to a TurboTax expert who beat your price. Adam Devine, tell him how I feel.
Hey, tax pro, she's been thinking twice. Best believe TurboTax will beat your price. This is a tax break.
Switch to a TurboTax Live expert and we'll beat what you paid your pro last tax season. Make the switch at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice. TurboTax full service only. Sign up by 12/20/2024 and file by 4/1/2025. Full details at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice.
Hi listeners, I'm Carolina.
And I'm Tessa. And together we are Femme Regard Podcast.
Femme. We are a show dedicated to educating and entertaining underdeveloped filmmakers and film enthusiasts alike.
We love sharing our experiences as filmmakers, what we've learned and what we've gone through.
And we love bringing on professional industry guests.
We want our listeners to learn from the best and get an honest account of the biz.
So come join the Femme Fam and give us a listen every Friday.
Streaming on all the major podcast platforms, including YouTube and our website, femregard.com, and of course, the Geekscape Network.
We are back, Horror Movie Night, with a movie that I think Scott has threatened to pick almost every October, but we finally gave him a reason he couldn't say no. A 25-year anniversary of, what is this, Scott? This has to be in like your top 10 favorite movies of all time, or at a minimum, top 5 favorite movies to watch in October.
It's a top 10 for October. I wouldn't say that I watch it every year, but I fucking love this movie. And so let me take you down a quick... I mean, we're talking Sleepy Hollow from 1999, Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow, if you were wondering, which, you know, honestly, this watch was a little harder to stomach.
I kind of agree. Like, there were parts in this movie that I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, this movie's great. I can't believe it's been a bit since I watched it. But there's actually some of the dialogue in this movie... like gave me douche chills.
yeah, it's that, and also now that the veil has been lifted, and I realize that he doesn't use brown people in his movies because they don't fit my aesthetic, which is fucking crazy. I guess that I always overlooked that because, you know, the Hudson Valley in the 1700s or whatever. This is 1700s.
I was going to say, this one I feel like probably gets the easiest pass.
It does, but it still feels bad. Also, I've between the last time I watched this, because I think it's been a couple years, it's been like 3 or 4 years probably since I actually sat down and watched it. I've watched a lot of Bridgerton.
Yep.
All right, and there are a lot of brown people in Bridgerton who... I mean, you don't have to. It's fucking fantasy, y'all. It doesn't matter if there weren't brown people there at the time.
I'm gonna mention this right now because this is making me laugh so much in a terrible way. In a very, that is 2007, if I've ever seen it. Is I've told you guys off air that I've been binging One Tree Hill, right?
Yes.
So for the first 4 seasons of One Tree Hill.
Sleepy Hollow, also a One Tree Hill.
Yeah, it's there's 2 trees in your background, you liar.
Oh, fuck. Well, that's the wrong hill. That's the wrong hill.
The first 4 seasons of One Tree Hill, they are high school students. And throughout the entire 4 seasons of them being high school students, there is maybe 2 students of color in the entire show. Then they do a jump 4 years into the future, and 2 of them are now teachers at the high school. Suddenly, so many people of color, because now we need to do the white basketball coach and white English teacher there to like. Fuck. I was like, my God, like the trope, like just flipping on its head immediately. I'm like, this is insane. But also like weirdly charming, and it's very dated. Every song is from Drive Thru Records soundtrack kind of way. Scott, I see you've got a can in your hand, so let's pop the top before we do this.
Now, Kyle, you had your chance for a fucking alley-oop, baby. New Holland Ichabod.
Ow. Wow.
Should be called
I really
Ica
thought we
Hops.
were gonna. I really thought we were gonna be on the same page with this one, Kyle.
No, but I do have something as direct as Ichabod is.
Is it Headless Horseman?
Headless Oarsman, because it's from Gray Sail Brewing. So he's on a canoe with his jack-o'-lantern and his oar, and it's a pumpkin ale.
Well, we're close because this is a pumpkin ale too. So this is year. We're in year 10, right? Like we're not at the 500 episodes yet, but we're in year 10.
We're in the shit for sure.
And I have wanted to do this movie for 10 years. And I've just been like, I just pick something else for October. And but I've always known that New Holland Ichabod Pumpkin Ale was going to be the drink of choice for this as soon as it became a thing.
I don't think we get that out here. I don't think I'm not familiar with it, so I don't think we get this out here.
I think they're from New York. I mean, it's pretty fun that they
listen,
because I mean they've got if it's not New York, then it's it's Michigan. It's Holland, Michigan. I'm a fucking idiot. They have a giant windmill on it, and so I was like, oh, is it really the Hudson Valley because there's a windmill in this movie? But I've actually been to the town over from New Holland. Or Holland, Michigan. I'm an idiot.
Oh, God, I shouldn't. Okay, so I've got a couple things. First of all, I've decided that we need to go into making at least one horror movie night sponsored alcoholic drink.
Says the guy who's never had a sip of alcohol.
Hear me out. It should be called Ica Hops, and its slogan should be a drink without head. But secondly, throwing this out to YAOK host Alyssa Lube, lives 20 minutes from where Washington Irving lives. So I've gone to the graveyard where he's buried and seen where the original bridge that Sleepy Hollow is based on used to be. Yeah. And seen the fixed replica one that they've put in the graveyard. Of course. Because spoiler alert, the original bridge is now just a street.
It's been a long time.
They do a great film festival, which the film festival already happened. Peter's short Damn Handy played at the Sleepy Hollow Film Festival over there, but they also had restorations of Maniac that played. They played The Adventures of Mr. Toad and Ichabod Crane on a Friday. Like they're playing a whole bunch of rep stuff with a handful of shorts. It was if I went, it was a great festival. If I didn't, you should go next year.
It's I'm glad that you brought up The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, because I will be mentioning that at least 2 or 3 times during Scott's plot description. But Scott, with that, tell us about Sleepy Hollow from 1999.
I have to tell the listeners 2 things. One, for the uninitiated, I've had a death metal band called Ichabod Crane since 2006. Although the story goes, the lore is that we were looking for a name, and the original drummer was like, what about Ichabod? And I was like, well, there is a band from Boston called Ichabod. What about Ichabod Crane? And he was like, sure, let's do it. Ichabod is actually a pretty sweet name because the translation of it from, whatever original language it is, I can't remember at this point, it means no son of glory, because what people would do is they would name their kids things that would mean that demons wouldn't want them. And so like calling your son Ichabod no son of glory means, hey, this kid's a fucking loser. And I don't think that Washington Irving knew that when he wrote the story, but it actually is very interesting because Ichabod in the original story is kind of like a pervy school teacher, and Katrina is a student.
Kinda is in the cartoon too, because I watch the cartoon every single year.
Yeah, the cartoon is very similar in general tone to
general
the original
perviness
story. But I do
is it similar
love
in other tones? I didn't mean to just put it on blast for perviness. So
but I do love that we get him being kind of a little bit more likable in one sense in Tim Burton's version. But with that said, let me dive into the plot synopsis for listeners, I'm guessing that most people know the general beats of this, but it is important that we kind of go through it, speak and talk about what happens here versus, more or less what happens in the story. So the film opens with a mysterious letter being penned and sealed. Then Martin Landau, who plays Peter Van Garrett, gets decapitated by the Horseman. Awesome.
The opening scene is so good. Like the carriage driver just being decapitated when he looks out the window, the shot of the blood spraying on the pumpkin face.
And the thing about
it's a perfect opening. It's
it really is, and it's so funny to finally discuss this movie because it's kind of been a running joke the entire time we've done this podcast that decapitations are kind of
Scott
my
loves
thing.
head trauma.
Like I don't think anybody's going to pick this for their double feature. I know I'm not, but The Borrower is literally this movie in 1980s LA.
Is it really?
You
quick add to the list. Yeah, I'm familiar with
We've
the
done it
poster,
the
but
show.
We did it.
Exactly.
I forgot to text you guys how excited I was. I was listening to the Flophouse on my drive home from RetroCon, and they were interviewing this girl in New York who I guess I can't remember her name or where she works, but she does those midnight movie screenings throughout New York City, and they were asking her about what is a movie that you absolutely wish you could show in the proper way, and she was like The Borrower, because she had done a series with that director.
John McNaughton is fucking
and she's like, we screened
work.
Henry, and we had screened all these other movies that he had made, and I told him I really wanted to do The Borrower, and he was like, good luck finding a print. He's like,
I think that we're stuck with the VHS. And
I
have a VHS copy.
He's like that. But she explained, and this is kind of an interesting behind the scenes as well, because another reference that she made was tracers.
Wow.
And she goes, those prints only get found if someone gives a shit enough to do the searching for free. And she's like, the only reason we were able to screen tracers was because some intern at Full Moon Pictures cared enough to dig through all of these unlabeled canisters of film trying to find the tracers.
That must be dirty fucking work too.
You know what I mean?
It's their first week of work right after their summer. That's their summer internship, and they have fucking Full Moon.
But I mean, I think that also kind of it makes you appreciate Shout Factory and Vinegar Syndrome, because I feel like that's part of it, is that they're like, we'll go. You don't have to pay anybody. We'll go through your seedy basement of unlabeled canisters of film trying to find this.
Yep.
I mean, and then there's the opposite side of the spectrum. Buddy Cooper goes into his, his storage locker and finds,
be careful.
200 copies of Fall Break, the little singles that he was selling at Creature Feature Weekend.
I still need to get a proper sleeve for that. That is a prized possession of mine now.
Oh, it's so sick that we all have copies.
I'm so stoked.
I got to
I can't believe Mutilator 2 played Fright Fest this year. I was
anyway, back to Sleepy
Hollow.
Hollow.
What are we talking about?
We're 14 minutes into recording, and we've said that Martin Landau dies in the beginning. That's as far
I
as
know
we've
where
gotten.
we're at. So then we go from that is Sleepy Hollow, where the first scene hits. And then we go to New York City, and Ichabod Crane is a very angst-ridden, nervous detective who is obsessed with science instead of just accepting that people die because of natural causes. He was like, but they're fishing a body out of the river, and he goes, this man was murdered, and the guy goes, he was found in he's like, we have to look at the cause of death, and the guy goes, well, the constable goes, he was, or the other constable, because he's Constable Crane, but there's another guy who's fishing the body out of the water, and he goes, well, I mean, we pulled him out of the water, he drowned, and he's like, well, only if there's water in the lungs, we have to, do an autopsy, and it kind of shows this this lack of belief in science, and that Ichabod is a man of science. But I love Christopher Lee as the judge. And he's like just lambasting Ichabod Crane in this courtroom, and this guy is in a torture some sort of torture device, just chilling as they're having this conversation, and it's the funniest scene in the whole movie. So Ichabod gets blackballed, excommunicated almost, out to this small town called Sleepy Hollow out in the Hudson Valley, and because there has been a murder. And so he gets out there and he goes to this harvest festival at the Van Tassel house, mansion, whatever you want to call it. And Katrina Van Tassel, played by the absolutely stunning Christina Ricci, is this is easily my favorite Christina Ricci.
See, man, I was about to say, as a person who has always loved Christina Ricci, this is my least favorite Christina Ricci look.
It's because she has no eyebrows in it.
Yeah.
I know, I get it, but I mean, this is my favorite character of hers.
Sure.
It's a good character. They meet playing a game called Pickety Witch.
Yeah, who's got a kiss for the Pickety Witch?
But I think that may have also been... There's only a few things that come from the Disney cartoon in this, and I feel like they are playing in the background Pickety Witch at the big party.
Probably.
That Brom tells the story of the Headless Horseman to scare Ichabod. I'm pretty sure that there's like people with their eyes covered, like running around grabbing each other and kissing.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's right, because there's an image of Ichabod with the eye covering, right?
Yes, exactly.
So yeah. So he's
Yeah,
that's part of it. It's very ambiguous, but like
it's
an
a nice
ambiguous
little
party
Easter
game.
egg.
It's like you could think it's Pin the Tail on the Donkey if you didn't know that it was Pickety Witch.
Yeah,
I'm sure that I thought that it was Pin the Tail on the Donkey when I was a child. Watching,
No doubt.
100%.
I did until right now. We're having this conversation.
There we go.
That's why I brought it up.
But so instead, then Brom, whose last name isn't Brom Bones in this, it's Brom Van Grunt, I want to say.
Well, because they needed to have
this.
this whole like... I feel like one of the big things in this movie is they're really trying to like establish that this is a small town of essentially like 10 families.
Yes.
So they want to keep everyone's names like locked into the same family trees, ostensibly.
Yeah, well, and Van it shows that they are recent German settlers, or Dutch. Actually, sorry, it's Dutch, not German.
Yeah.
And that's why they're all Van. It's like of whatever. So very close, tight-knit community with a secret, and the secret is, or all the dignitaries of the towns, they all take Ichabod up from the main party to a study, and they explain to him that there is this ghostly horseman. He was a Hessian mercenary sent over to keep the colonists in line, and he filed his teeth down to spikes to be more, and he would spike his hair to be scarier. He is finally brought down by some soldiers, and with the help of two little girls, some twin girls.
Two twins, yeah.
Yeah, twin girls. They cut off his head, they bury it apart from his body, and they believe that the Headless Horseman is coming, decapitating people as punishment because he wants his head back. Ichabod says there has to be a logical reason for this. I'm a man of science. And they say, sure, whatever. So then they go on with it. He goes on with his investigation. He finds out that the widow Winship was pregnant, and he still believes that the Headless Horseman is a person, not a ghost. Brom doesn't help. Oh, by the way, Brom...
Former Jonathan London groomsman Casper Van Dien.
Yes, Casper Van Dien.
Mm-hmm.
I want to call out real quick, because we did mention this Headless Horseman when it was a human. Beautifully played by Christopher Walken.
Walken be
good.
walking,
Scary.
all right?
Yeah. He's doing the damn thing.
He's actually not doing that much walking in this. He's mostly riding.
Doing a lot of running. Riding, sorry.
I do also love that, Crane comes in and he is this believer of science, and most times I would be very much siding with this, he has intellect and he has this thing, but it's like everybody in that room is like, nah, dude. I mean, you'll see, I guess, if you hang around long enough, like, you'll see we're all gonna die.
Yes,
but
yeah. So, and the reason for it is that as Ichabod does his investigation, he finds out that the widow Winship was pregnant. This sealed document was Peter Van Garrett giving his entire fortune and his house and everything over to the widow Winship and her child, and so that leads Ichabod to believe that it was possibly Katrina because he thinks that she's a witch. She takes him to see the crone who lives out in the woods. This is the one of the two little girl twins that saw the horseman get decapitated 20 years ago or whatever.
And by God, she is truly
great until the eyeballs come out like
I literally wrote this
movie.
witch scene. This witch scene is like the very beginning of Tim Burton leaning on CGI. Like this is right where the beginning of the end comes with his practical
and I've always
effects.
hated this scene. I mean, I love the scene until, and I also love that the same woman who I did not write down her name, the actor's name, plays Lady Van Tassel, which is Katrina's very cold stepmother, and she also plays the crone. I love that. It's
I
very,
realized
very
that.
fun little.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I only found that out this watch because X-Ray was on because I watched it on Prime. So, in any case, they get spooked by the crone, and then they go to the Tree of the Dead, where they find that the Headless Horseman has been stuffing the heads that he takes into the stumps.
Love this scene.
Yes, such a great scene. And then the horseman comes to life, flies out of the tree, and Ichabod's like, oh, okay, I'm a believer now. There is something supernatural happening, and it's not Katrina. And then he does believe it's Katrina, and then he thinks that it's Baltus, her dad, and they all go to the church because to figure out why this is happening, and who they find out that whoever owns or is holding the skull of the Headless Horseman can control the Headless Horseman. So he thinks that it's Baltus because he was angry at
and now he's got all the land and stuff
he wants
too.
all the
Like,
land,
he's like,
right?
yeah.
He wants everybody he wants to keep the secret conspiracy, or keep the conspiracy secret. They go to the church because it's hallowed ground. The horseman, who is from hell, cannot go on hallowed ground. The horseman gets around that by taking a fence post, spearing Baltus Van Tassel through the chest, pulling him out, and then chopping his head off.
Kind of confirming that he's not the one controlling the.
And so they follow. The Ichabod is like, well, I guess that wasn't him, but he figures out that it's Lady Van Tassel because she had a cut in her hand, just like the murdered woman. I guess it was that the Killian?
No, it was that. No, the cut in the hand was something else. The cut in the hand was when he went out into the woods. He saw a woman having sex with another one of the councilmen.
With the preacher.
Yeah, with the preacher, and she slices open her hand,
and then rubs it on.
She says to him,
played by
like,
Jeffrey Jones, right? Which was also difficult to watch this movie after.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
Yeah, she asked Ichabod why he hadn't asked about the cut on her hand.
That's right.
And that's how she knew that he knew what was going on.
Yes, thank you. So they go to the windmill because it's Lady Van Tassel, the evil stepmother, is the other sister who saw the Hessian get decapitated 20 years earlier. She has had the skull the whole time, and she wants everything for herself. She wants to bring down the entire Van Tassel family. A fight ensues. They are chased by the horsemen back to the Tree of the Dead. More fighting more tussling ensues, and then Ichabod tosses the skull to the Headless Horseman, who puts it back on his head.
Who says, thanks.
Yeah, he goes, thank you. And then we get Christopher Walken.
He gives a Terminator / David from the Guest thumbs up. And
yes, exactly. And then he takes his new bride, the Lady Van Tassel, down
Which
to hell with
pretty
him.
rad. I do love that. I think that I was kind of worried that I maybe have only seen this once, and I was kind of worried that the ending wasn't going to be satisfying. You know, like as the movie progresses, and you know, I was watching it with Carly, and we were just sort of questioning the R rating a lot of times. We were like,
There's a lot of blood in this movie. What are you talking about?
There was. It continued to grow, but it was like also basing off of like, Beetlejuice is PG. So I'm like, is it a Tim Burton thing, or is it like, what is it, a timing thing? Like, what is it, right? And the more and more decapitations and the more blood that came out, and I was like, yes, I understand. But I also was a little worried that there wasn't going to be a very R-rated ending. He eats her tongue and then takes her to hell. It's pretty. I was very thankful for that.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful for how things ended with them.
No, until I remembered Ed Wood, I was debating if this was his first R-rated movie, because he is such a PG-13 director.
Yeah. He's just
that's what much it is.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, yes.
Right.
If nothing, he's cravenly capitalistic.
Adding all of those things together.
What goth is it?
I was just assuming. I was like, Tim Burton. I don't know. There is such a thing with his name, right? Like, there's just such a, for better or worse, there is a baggage that comes with a Tim Burton thing. Even if we're watching, Carly looked at me and was like, what year is this? And I was like, 2003. And I was like, 99? I was like, and that discrepancy was enough for me to be like, whoa. And let alone like any Tim Burton, filmography being so spread out is wild. But I was satisfied with the Sleepy Hollow ending. I was very happy with it.
This is kind of like, in general, this is the last, in my eyes, true good Tim Burton movie before like the next version of Tim Burton starts, because you follow this up with Planet of the Apes, which is like a miserable experience to watch.
I think I talked about that. I watched it this year, and
he kind of wins you back with Big Fish, but like that barely feels like a Tim Burton movie. Like that's like just this kind of magical, whimsical film. And then the one after that is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and it has been Charlie and the Chocolate Factory like movies for like a decade and a half. That was that was 2012. Yeah, Dark Shadows was like 2012.
I only watched it once, but I remember really enjoying how over the top campy it was.
And I felt the same way. So Consequence of Sound, I keep getting fed recommendations to read their articles all the fucking time, and they put out a list of like
your history, Matt.
They did the definitive rankings of Tim Burton's movies, and for the most part, I agreed with everything except for the fact that they put Dark Shadows as his absolute worst movie below Planet of the Apes.
Absurd.
That's absurd. I was like, that is an insane
On
take.
paper, I know that's wrong. I've only seen one of those movies. It's not Dark Shadows, and I know it's wrong.
Maybe they're just really into the Dark Shadows BBC series.
Yeah,
but like at the same time, I can't speak to that. I have never watched Dark Shadows, but I remember when Dark Shadows came out, reading an article, and you could not tear it out of my brain where it was from, but them saying that it was relatively like tonally similar. Like, I don't know if it was.
Because I think Dark Shadows wasn't that far off from like a Munsters or a.
Silly.
I was just gonna say Rob Zombie's Munsters. Like everybody, Tim Burton clearly he would not have said yes to Dark Shadows if he did not have an affinity for the Thing.
Yes.
And as with Zombie for Munsters, and it's like if you don't have an affinity for the Thing, then you can't do it. Like you can't. You can't even force one. You can't even do research and be like, this is my shit now. Like it's so based in, and we know that with all horror. Like we talk about that all the time.
So obvious when
it's so obvious when it does. Right. So then if you're remaking a niche thing or you're like retelling a niche thing, you have to have some appreciation for it.
Also a niche thing for American audiences, because I promise you
that's true.
The vast majority of the people that watch Dark Shadows didn't grow up, are American, that didn't grow up with the BBC show. I mean, like they watched it because it had Johnny Depp, Helena Bonham Carter, and I think Michelle Pfeiffer.
Someone else, I saw it once and I was like, this is fine. I got two notes that we didn't go over that I just want to mention, because we talked about the bad CGI, right? Like the CGI eyes and everything, terrible. I will say because there wouldn't have been
I didn't
a good
find it that
practical.
revolting. I thought it was okay.
Oh,
But
I've hated it since 1999.
No, I'm kind of right there with you, Scott. I saw this in theaters and was like, oof. But I think where there's a good where there's a good use of CGI because doing it practically would have looked worse is actually when the flesh and the muscles start growing back
I thought that
onto
was
the skull.
Yeah.
I think that looks awesome. Like
Well,
even
if you think about it, 25 years
later
ago,
yeah,
you know,
it looks great.
It holds up. I was actually very happy with that, but it's just so funny because the disparity between those two
scenes
is wild.
insane.
Yes.
And weirdly, it feels like Tim Burton was more of a fan of the crazy eyeballs when he decided to do CGI. He's like, this is what I need. The other thing I wrote down, I talked about how there's some like cringy lines. The cringiest line, and I had to write it down, is him going, "Perhaps there's a little witch in you, for you have bewitched my heart."
Me. Yeah.
You think so you didn't get a boner? Okay, bummer. I wish they would sell little cardinal fidgets because Ichabod fidgeting with this cardinal
You can make one, man.
illusion.
Yeah, I made one
yes,
after seeing this movie.
I know. I'm not going to make one. I want to
went
buy
home.
one for $3.
I wish you could see it. You could have seen the drawing I made of a bird and the drawing I made of a cage.
Listen, I saw the drawing you made of Kermit the Frog in 2024. I can only imagine what a cardinal in 1999
You
looked
do
like.
a Kermit on one side, a rainbow on the other, and you just fucking...
Oh man, I'm making that tonight. You kidding me?
Those are
Yeah,
going in the this year's scare package. Get ready, folks.
Hi, listeners. I'm Carolina.
And I'm Tessa. And together we are Femme Regard Podcast.
Femme.
We are a show dedicated to educating and entertaining underdeveloped filmmakers and film enthusiasts alike.
We love sharing our experiences as filmmakers, what we've learned and what we've gone through.
And we love bringing on professional industry guests.
We want our listeners to learn from the best and get an honest account of the biz.
So come join the Femme Fam and give us a listen every Friday.
Streaming on all the major podcast platforms, including YouTube and our website, femregard.com, and of course, the Geekscape Network.
Hey Mark, I was listening to Paramore the other day, and it really made me think about the amygdala and the limbic system.
You just made those words up, didn't you?
What, Paramore?
We're the Nevermind the Music podcast, where one musician
And one psychologist.
talk songwriting and the mind, one song at a time.
We'll hear everything from Green Day and Outkast
To Stevie Wonder and Dua Lipa.
and we mostly try to stay on topic.
Except for when we don't want to.
Never mind the music, wherever you get your podcasts.
Scott, this was your pick, so you get to decide what the double feature should be for this one.
Well, I'm obviously not going to go with another Tim Burton movie. But I am going to go with another movie with a very similar vibe to me. I'm going to go with Scarecrows from, is that 88 or 89?
88.
Wow.
I love
88.
that movie.
It is
That's on my rewatch this October list for sure.
I have not watched it since we did it for the show because it was very difficult to find. I don't even remember how we watched it. I think it was on YouTube and then we lost it, or
Well,
maybe it was
I watched it
VHS.
because I had a Blu-ray from Scream Factory.
Okay,
But how you guys watched it, I have
may
no
need to
clue.
rip it for me because I want to see a good copy of it.
I think it's on Tubi. I think it's on Tubi. I don't know what the transfer is on Tubi, but I have it.
If it's the Blue Monkey type thing where it's a fucking obvious Scream Factory Blu-ray rip, then I will watch it on Tubi.
Great.
Yeah, do it up. Kyle, what would your double feature be?
I'm going to pick Reanimator. It's sort of like the opposite
Lots of head.
Lots of head. Lots of head going on.
Literally,
sort of
that double
also-
feature is called Got Head.
Got head? Where is it? Where's the head? I mean, that is it. But it's also, Herbert West is a little bit opposite of Ichabod Crane in some ways. It is full science, but it's like supernatural science, and I think that that dichotomy is a lot of fun. So I'm going to go Reanimator.
All right. I got two options again. I had one that I wrote down, and then as we had the conversation, I thought of a second. But the first one that came to my mind, Ravenous. Just the old-timey vibes. I think Jeffrey Jones is also in that one.
He is in that one as well, yes.
But Ravenous. But then as we talked more
Do
about
you really
Ichabod
want to watch
Crane,
Jeffrey Jones twice in one
No,
night?
not really. But the more that we talked about Ichabod Crane, I thought of another. I'm pretty sure this is Johnny Depp. It's been a hot minute since I watched it. But a movie that feels like it could be like the Ichabod Crane dark retelling from hell.
It is.
Where
It is
and I also mentioned it earlier on in the discussion of the
That's fine.
of the movie.
I have some of us don't have a problem with doing a double feature with a movie that was mentioned.
I know. I'm the one that has the problem. It's a valid problem, all right?
Listen, guys, we're halfway through the best month of all time.
It's true.
October. A great man was
I know
born
that
this
hurt you
month.
to say, Matt, because it's not Christmas.
I know, but you know what? It is the month that I was born, and it has Halloween, so I will put this over December. So what better way to celebrate than to buy a scare package while they're still up on the website this month? Just let us know what your shirt size is, and if you already own any horror movie night t-shirts so that we can try our best to avoid sending you a duplicate. It really helps us out a bunch. And then also hit up our Patreon, patreon.com/HMN podcast. Hear a very weird long conversation that we had while talking about scarecrows that got cut. But lastly, Scott, what have you been watching, reading, listening to, etc.?
All right, so I knocked out another 2024 movie in the last week. I watched Oddity finally. And man, that lived up to expectations.
Nice.
It was so good. Here's the thing is, again, and having a wife with ADHD, now she didn't watch it, but having a wife with ADHD sometimes makes it difficult to watch things that have a twist because she catches on to twists 99 times out of 100. And I'm like, fuck, like, especially we were trying to watch First Omen and she caught the twist in the first 15 minutes. And I was like, no. And we haven't finished it because I've been so like sad that when she realizes that I lied about that she got the twist that early on, she's gonna be like, I already knew. And be like, I know, I just wanted you to enjoy the movie. I knew what the twist was pretty much as soon as the blind sister brought the creepy wooden torso to the house. I still really enjoyed the ride. It's so cool because if you don't know what the sound of foxes yelling in the night is, it sounds like there are children screaming in the background throughout the movie. It's foxes, and it's such a great sound design choice. I mean, everything about that movie is the right choice. Like, if there are missteps in other movies that I've discussed that came out this year recently, this one had no missteps in my opinion. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. Best horror movie I've watched this year.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I really
I'm
love
sorry.
that watch too.
It ties with First Omen.
Sure.
They're both 10 out of 10s, perfect movies for me.
I'm going to jump in first because mine's a real snooze fest to be the last one. It's the last of the YA novels I read while I was at San Diego Comic-Con that I really enjoyed. It's by Jennifer Dugan called Hot Dog Girl. It's one of the most banned books in America, and for the life of me, I can't tell you why on this one.
Is that like a prequel to Mean Girls?
You would think. But
come on, guys,
no.
that was one time.
Yeah, but it's literally just that she. So the premise of the book. Oh, actually, I already know why this is the case. Never mind. Here's a great reason why it was banned. Because gay. So like.
Yeah, I didn't.
No, it's the
need you
worst reason why it was banned, Matt. But that's the reason why it was banned.
The premise of the book is it's about a girl whose mother passed away, but one of her like childhood memories is that they would go to this local amusement park near her house, and she loves going there. And she finally gets to work there for the summer, but she's unfortunately the hot dog girl, which is that she has to dress in a hot dog costume and draw kids to the concession stand, which is only insult to injury because she's also vegetarian. So she's like, great, I'm a vegetarian. I have to dress like a fucking hot dog all summer. She's in love with the guy who's on the diving team, like at the park, like he does like a diving show. And she's like, every time he sees me, I'm just like this weird, awkward girl in a hot dog costume. So she convinces her best friend, who's gay, that they should pretend to be in a relationship so that they can like eavesdrop on the guy's dating life.
This is literally Cyrano de Bergerac.
Yes, it's basically what it is with a hot dog. So, but simultaneously, while all that's happening, she also has found out that they are going to be closing the park for good after that summer. So she's simultaneously trying to find a way to save the park as well. But it does that thing that all YA novels do, where the character is a little too selfish and a little too needy, and it gets really annoying. Yep. But then you like dive deeper into the reasons, and you're like, okay, fine, you won me over. But like, I remember reading it at the booth throughout Comic-Con and being like, I love this book so much, and this character annoys me so much because of how selfish she's being. And then, there's always like that moment where you're like, all right, fine, I still like you. But so Hot Dog Girl, really recommend it. And then check out our interview with the author on YOK, because who am I if not a double promoter? Kyle, take us home.
I watched two classics this week. I watched School of Rock, Richard Linklater's School of Rock. I returned to it after 15 years, probably, maybe not 15 years, maybe 10 years. I hadn't seen it in a long time. That movie is perfection. It really, truly is. There's not a missed thing in that movie. Which is kind of just par for the course with Linklater. I feel like he has more home runs than misses in general. 100%. 100%. And it's so fun because it does spans genre without losing his voice in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Like, I think that like he is able, because I think he's just a human man. It's like if you think too hard about it, then you fuck it up. And I don't think that. I think that he thinks thoroughly about it, but he doesn't think too hard about the things that he's putting to page or screen or anything like that. It's very, very natural for him. And then the other thing I watched, which is more difficult to put from script to screen, but Todd Solondz didn't seem to have an issue with that. I watched Happiness.
Jesus Christ. I didn't message you. So,
You
Scott,
did.
I don't think you know this. I messaged Kyle and just said, please don't pick this as a Patreon movie one day.
Yeah. And
I would veto it. I would veto that so easily.
Yeah. Big veto. I would just do it to bait Scott. But I
bait
wouldn't
me,
ever.
Kyle.
I bait you with lots of other things. I'm a masturbator, if you will.
Yeah, with happiness. I'm masturbating with happiness.
We do.
But Happiness, I think. By the time this came out, it's been hard to find for a lot of years, for many years. It's been super controversial, and it just got put out by Criterion last month. So it is a little more accessible now than it had been in the past. And I think if we're talking about, I think Linklater and Solondz are in the same conversation in a lot of ways. I think The School of Rock is not by any means, but Linklater's earlier films, those mid to late 90s films, talking about characters in life and the mundane, but how the mundane transforms into anything. And mundane, something has to grow out of the mundane or else there's no growth, right? Like the mundane is just ground level, it's just soil. And I think that both of those filmmakers are able to do that. Happiness is able to do so in such a frightening and controversial way that feels so like in your backyard sort of situation. And I think that, and it is also at the same time, it's tongue-in-cheek though too. It's white, it's middle, it's suburban or upper to middle class. It's it's those things, but it's also, that's what you sort of read in tabloids. It's like it knows what it is. It's accentuating what it is and not playing down what it is. And I think that is something that people get really freaked out about, particularly now. I think that there's, it's the last hurrah before we have to over-represent without understanding of why we represent. There's a whole era of the 2000s, of the aughts that do that over-represent without an understanding of why we do so. And Happiness, it feels like the last hurrah before that.
I would argue, because I do think you're right, that they are very comparable. I think the difference is that I think Linklater always, no matter what the movie is, has a warmth to it.
Yes.
And a desire to be enjoyed by the masses, where all of Todd's movies are so antagonistic and like actively trying to not be mainstream. I think that's the big divide, right? Because they are both people who make movies that are more often than not experimental, and like the only difference between the two is that Linklater has had enough mainstream hits that he can do a Bad News Bears to help fund a Boyhood. You know what I mean? Like he's like, I'm going to do this 12-year experiment, but the only way that that's financially sound is I have to make 4 or 5 of these very down the middle PG-13 family friendly movies. But you can tell that it's always like financing the bigger picture. Essentially.
And he's figured out how to play the system as an artist. You know, like I mean,
which
like,
is rare.
I think that like which is rare. Absolutely. I think that's a one in a million shot in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's like him and like Rodriguez are like the only people I can think of that have juggled that well.
You know, who've come out of that pretty clean. Yeah. You know, I mean, there's been people who've tried to do that. I mean, I wouldn't even say Tarantino is necessarily in that realm.
Yeah,
you know,
he's never really had that like being able to do Tarantino couldn't do a Spy Kids the way that Rodriguez has been able to.
No shot.
Although you know what? If that's what his 10th movie is a remake of Spy Kids, I'll see it.
I'll fucking see it. Yeah, for sure. Happiness is a
Scott spitballing. By the way, if we're making a T-shirt, Quentin Tarantino's Spy Kids, I think it's a shirt that we should put on T-shirt.
Just the title font, or Spy Kids, a film by Quentin Tarantino on the back.
Yes, yeah, I'm writing it down.
No, but you're right. That's absolutely
I think happiness is. I'm excited for more people to discover it. I think that with this Criterion release, and I think I don't know if it's going to go on the channel. I don't know if it's on the channel currently at the time of our recording, but I do think that people will find a lot of interest in it. There's a lot of actors that are in it that you will recognize and appreciate their performances. Like it's really fucking great, but it's also really fucking dark.
Yeah.
So
it's a movie that you have to be sure you know the person you're recommending it to.
Yes. And I don't know any of you, but I hope you watch it.
All right. Well, what I hope y'all watch is a couple Halloween classics as we're getting closer and closer to the big day. Like maybe something we'll talk about next week.
Hi, listeners. I'm Carolina.
And I'm Tessa. And together we are Femme Regard Podcast.
Femme.
We are a show dedicated to educating and entertaining underdeveloped filmmakers and film enthusiasts alike.
We love sharing our experiences as filmmakers, what we've learned and what we've gone through.
And we love bringing on professional industry guests.
We want our listeners to learn from the best and get an honest account of the biz.
So come join the Femme Fam and give us a listen every Friday.
Streaming on all the major podcast platforms, including YouTube and our website, femregard.com, and of course, the Geekscape Network.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.